Maniac is the latest horror movie to be written and produced by Alexandre Aja. Now, he's the director of films like the remake of Piranha 3D and also Switchblade Romance, which is a horror movie I really like. Now, he hasn't directed Maniac. That's somebody called Frank Colfoon. I have probably pronounced that incorrectly, but it's not a director I'm familiar with. But it is based on an original horror movie that was released in the 80s called Maniac, so the same name, directed by William Lustig, the bloke who did films like Maniac Cop, a few other films like that as well. So the film follows a character called Frank, who is in this version played by Elijah Wood. Now, the gimmick of this movie, and this is something that you'll probably already be aware of, is that the entire film, or almost the entire film, is shot from Frank's POV point of view. So you see everything like a first-person shooter video game. You see everything through Frank's eyes. You know, the only time you really see Frank is if you catch a reflection of him or something of that nature. So straight away, this is something that I believe wasn't in the original. This is a new sort of gimmick for the remake. And it's something that I feel, I know that the film's been criticised for because people say that, you know, does it make the audience an accomplice when Frank goes around being a serial killer? But I feel that it doesn't so much make the audience as an accomplice as it just gives you an uncomfortable glimpse into the life of a serial killer. I thought it was actually really quite an interesting stylistic take. It had a very sort of John Carpenter feel to it. Now, from the first sort of few frames of the movie, it's startling how similar stylistically, other than the POV stuff, it's startling how similar it is to Drive, Nicholas Winding Refn's action thriller that came out starring Ryan Gosling. You know, it's set in LA, the music is very much influenced by 80s sort of synth and Europop. It has that same sort of feel to it, and it's a style that I loved in Drive, and I loved it in this as well. I definitely really like that sort of 80s homage style. Elijah Wood is great as Frank, even though you don't really get to see an awful lot of him because it's shot from his POV. When you do catch glimpses of him, or towards the end as he's committing murders, the camera does become somewhat detached. I think that's to show, you know, his detachment from reality increasing as the camera, you know, if he's committing a murder, the camera might turn around and you'll see him doing it towards the end of the movie. So there are certain stylistic ticks in there that allow you to see more of Elijah Wood. I mean, I really like Elijah Wood. Obviously, I like him in Lord of the Rings, but I thought he was great. One of the best things in Sin City is Kevin, who was, I believe, a serial killer in that as well. He does creepy and evil really well, and there are certain scenes at the end of this movie, which I won't spoil, but certain scenes like right at the end where he has to sort of, you know, do quite a lot with the character, considering he hasn't been given an awful lot of material, and I think he does really, really well. As far as the effects go in this movie, the actual first murder in this, now Frank actually scalps his victims, that's how he kills them. The first murder in this was actually quite heavily CGI and looked pretty awful, if I'm being honest. Didn't look convincing whatsoever. So I was watching it having heard all the rumours, you know, it's really hard to watch, it's stomach churning, blah blah blah. Watched this sort of CGI laden first murder scene and thought, well, that's really not convincing. I'm not sure about this. But actually, as the film goes on, they seem to mix in sort of a lot of practical effects with subsequent murder scenes. There's one where he just, to begin with, scratches a lady's back, and that is probably the most convincing scene in the film in terms of sort of effects, and it looks like it was done practically, but it was very convincing. So as the film goes on, and it's almost like as the director finds his feet in terms of the effects, it gets more convincing, and it does turn your stomach. Now, Maniac, you know, it's not a film that's changing the horror genre at all. It's very much an homage to sort of grindhouse slasher movies of the 80s. I mean, it's based on one of those films, so it wears that on its sleeve. It is a very, as it goes on, especially the latter half of the film, it is a very effective horror movie in terms of, you know, its style, etc. I mean, the plot itself becomes more interesting as the film goes on, because, you know, we establish at the beginning that Frank is a serial killer. He meets a girl called Anna, who he befriends, and it sort of implies as the film goes on that she is the only thing sort of keeping his inner monster at bay, and their relationship goes to some interesting places. And Anna, you know, fair play to the filmmakers, she's not, you know, the stupid damsel in distress in this movie, or at least not to the extent that you're used to seeing in this sort of movie. You know, she's actually quite sharp, and I thought that was quite refreshing in a film of this nature, which could be, you know, accused of being misogynistic. That they make the lead female character somewhat sharp, and I'm not saying that, you know, this is like a great film and representation of women and all the rest of it, because it's not. You know, she's still potential cannon fodder, but they give her character enough to do to make her more than just a cardboard cutout victim. So yeah, I quite like the character of Anna. The film itself is quite well done. It's a shame that, you know, it's a bit wobbly at the start, but there are a couple of standout scenes in there, like one where he's chasing a woman through a sort of subway train station looking thing, and, you know, it's very much, I would imagine it's very much an homage to An American Werewolf in London, because it looks almost identical. So there's a lot in there for horror fans, and I think horror fans will see a lot of references and pick up a lot of details that maybe normal movie audiences might not, and it'll work best for already established horror fans. But I do think it's a good movie, and if you've been put off by the rumours, you know, the violence is so extreme that you can't stomach it, and it's disgusting and blah blah blah, the violence isn't that bad. You know, maybe it's because we're becoming desensitised to these sort of horror movies, but I didn't think it was as extreme as a lot of reviews have made out. I mean, don't get me wrong, it is pretty grisly and it is violent, but I don't find it to be as sort of offensively extreme as a lot of I think professional reviews have. So I enjoyed it. It was a perfectly serviceable horror movie. Elijah Wood is great. I'd like to see him do more roles of this nature. I think he's definitely found his niche. You know, creepy bad guy is Elijah Wood's niche at the moment, and I definitely think he should you know, develop his skills, because he's really good in this. So Maniac I would recommend, not mainly for horror hounds, but not just for horror hounds. I think anybody who, you know, enjoys a film of this sort of style, like Drive, you know, I think, because that was ultra-violent as well, but I think anybody could watch this movie and probably enjoy it. Just approach with caution, because it is very violent.